Welcome back to the polls. Joining us now here at the polls is Mercedes McKinley, who is a candidate for a seat on the school board of Clark County School District. Mercedes, thank you for taking the time to talk to us here at the polls. Mercedes, please tell our viewers a bit about yourself and what interested you to run in this election for the school board.
Fantastic. Yes. Thank you so much for having me today.
It's our pleasure.
It's really an honor to be here. What got me interested in running for the school board is that I worked as a teacher for the Clark County School District for about 3 years. And I worked as a substitute and I worked as a certified temporary tutor before I became a licensed educator. And I like to point that out because those are the jobs that don't pay very well and don't have benefits, but the tutors and the substitutes are actually what also make the schools go around, along with the teachers and the other staff. So I left teaching in 2021 right after I gave birth to my daughter. And during that time, it was the year we were teaching online. Very difficult year for parents, teachers, students. It was a tough year, and I made the decision to leave because I lost my father to COVID, and I was afraid to go back into the classroom with a newborn baby, and so I took a step back, and I started different work, but all of my friends are still at the district, and those 3rd and 4th grade students are now in middle school, and there are so many problems that it's just gotten worse. And so I really feel called to do something. And that's really why I'm here. I've been in the classroom. I was a student. I graduated from El Dorado High School in 1997. I am a Gen Xer. But that's also what's kind of got me going, is that some of the problems we had in the 90s are still prevalent today. And some of them are simply worse. And that's just not acceptable. I also really don't like the fact that we're 49 out of 50 in education in the entire country. That is unacceptable for a state that has as much money as we do. And so there's just poor management, and I really want a chance to try to make things right for our students.
Well, you did your high school here, so you're practically a Nevada native.
Yes.
So you must know the schools in and out since you lived here for your whole life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I'm really proud of this. When I first came to this country in 1987, I came from El Salvador. I was 7 years old, didn't speak English. And I went to Holly Hewitson Elementary, which is by 20th and Bonanza, more like Bonanza and Eastern, right in the heart of the city, which actually had a very large Asian population at the time. I had a very good friend. I had a good friend in Park from Korea, nice. And I had some Vietnamese friends, and the demographic was very different in 1987. But that school's where I learned to speak English. And so after I actually was in Illinois for about 17 years, and I came home to be close to my parents, and that's when I started getting back in education. I took a job as a 3rd grade teacher at that same school. Oh, wow. So I got to be a teacher at the same school I was a student at, and not only that, fate would have it that they gave me the same exact classroom. And I couldn't believe it when I got there. I thought it was a joke, and I asked the principal, I said, is this the first room in this row? And she said, yes. I was like, this was my class. So really wild, full circle. Wow. But again, I have footage of that classroom in 2019.
Wow.
In a storm where I had to put buckets out because my roof was leaking. And I had to move the students and get the computers out of the way. And, I couldn't really teach that morning, right? Because that's literally how rough some of our schools are. The infrastructure is so bad. And we were really sad because that school was not on the list of the schools that are getting renovated or rebuilt. And so these are the kinds of things that I'm paying attention to. Not only do I have friends that are teachers, but that particular school, there's a staff member who's been there for 35 years. 35 years. She was a secretary when I was a student there, and then she's still there. And so serving her and making sure that the district is taking care of her is also important to me. And so, so I know the schools, but my heart is really with the students and staff in a way that I don't feel this passionate about anything else, because it's who I am.
So it's really cool how you actually see the current state and you try to want to make a change about it. So how are things right now? Tell us where things are right now in terms of this CCSD under a current set of our board members.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to be honest, it's kind of scary. The most recent numbers show that we are short about 1,400 teachers, and that is a lot. Last year was about 1,000, and I can honestly tell you that from the time I was working for the district, so I took my first long-term substitute job in 2018, and we were short about 700 or 800 teachers in 2018. And so I've watched these numbers grow, and then I also feel bad because I'm one of those who left. So 1,400 open vacancies, that's a lot. So we need to take care of that, number one. As I mentioned before, we're 49 out of 50 in education. We're really failing our students on so many levels. And there's a lot of red tape. One of the issues that I'm also really focused on is getting more support from the community. The more I've talked to people in the community, I find out that there are nonprofits, there are groups, community groups that want to come into the schools and help. But there's so much red tape from the district itself that doesn't allow that help to come in. And so that's another one of my goals in the trustee position, is to not just make the voices of our community, our students and our parents, more elevated and amplified, but to really work within our community. Our community knows what we need. And I'll give you one quick example. And I like to say I have my receipts. Look me up if you need to. Donors Choose is a website that teachers use to raise money for their own classrooms. So a lot of times after I couldn't use any of my own money, I would start a Donors Choose campaign. And you can look me up on record. The last Donors Choose campaign I did for my classroom was for food. All food, chips, snacks for my kids, because I realized that the whole hour before lunch, Ms. McKinley, is it lunch yet? Ms. McKinley, is it lunch yet? Ms. McKinley, they're hungry. And so I started asking the cafeteria for food, and they were giving us leftover breakfast food, muffins, oranges, apples, anything. The kids will eat. Well, then they started an after-school program, and the food had to go there. Yeah. And so now I didn't have food. And so I started spending my own money. And then again, once I couldn't, I had to raise funds. And so these are at a very basic level. Our children are hungry. And if our children are hungry and stressed, they can't learn. So now I've found out that there is an organization in town that could have helped me fill that gap with the food. But no one in the district guided me in that direction. None of my superiors helped me get that help. And so those kinds of issues, exactly what I want to tackle is like, hey, there are groups in town who can help us solve these problems. And last but not least, I can give you some numbers real quick. 81.5% is our graduation rate. And that's up from last year, or at least the 2022 numbers, which was 81.2. So it's increased a little bit. We need to get that at 100.
It's not enough.
Exactly. It's not. Only 81% of our students are making it all the way through. And that is a problem because we're not creating an educated workforce. So then, I participate in things like the Henderson Chamber of Commerce. I run a small business where I translate English and Spanish, and they talk about all these companies that want to come and provide jobs, but I'm sitting there asking the question, if our students aren't graduating and our students are at the bottom, do we really have an educated workforce for these companies that are coming in? And the answer is no. So instead of looking elsewhere for that educated workforce, we need to create it right here.
Yes. Mercedes, do you have an opinion or background why Superintendent Jesus Jara resigned in February?
Oh my goodness. That is a massive can of worms. So I'll put it to you this way. I was excited when he started in 2018. That's when I first started, and I really thought that we were going to see a lot of change. And we did, but it wasn't the kind of change I hoped for. Okay. And what I noticed right away, people talk about a toxic work environment that was created under his leadership. And I can tell you right away that first year, the students were simply turned into numbers. That's the best way I can articulate it. Our students became numbers. We have to treat this group like this, we have to treat that group like that. And there's no human connection of how do we actually help them. It immediately became on how we need to make the numbers look. So as to why he resigned, I think there was a lot of pressure. And I want to remind you, the school board, that's part of the job of the school board, is to hire the superintendent. They hired him. They fired him. Then they rehired him. And then he quit. So at the end of the day, I have to lay the entire blame. Now, I'm not sure why he quit at the end. Again, there's a lot there to unravel. But at the end of the day, it is the school board's job to hire. And so they hired him, they fired him, they hired him back because of the contract, right? And then he still wanted $500,000 in severance, which I was at that meeting, and a lot of people said, no, absolutely not. Why should he get $500,000? Look at the state of our schools, our education morale is down. Well, they still cut him a $250,000 severance package that he left with. And so this goes back to those contracts that the board themselves set up. And that's another reason why I want to do this. Because no, he was from Miami, Florida. You know, whatever was working out there for that demographic worked for them. Las Vegas is different. Again, you know, we're that melting pot. And so many of our teachers, administrators, those higher paid people in CCSD will not put their own kids in our schools. They are in private schools, they are in charter schools. It's another reason why I'm fighting for this. I don't want a school board making decisions over where my child, or you know, your child, I don't know if you have children, but your potential children are gonna go, and they don't trust the system well enough to put their own kid. To me, that says a lot. That says a lot. You don't have faith in your own leadership. So that's another reason why I really want to change it, you know, and under the superintendent, like I said, I stepped away from the district from the last 3 years, but it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And like I said, teacher morale is down, very much so. And yeah, we really need to turn it around here.
Are you one of those that, you know, you believe that, you know, if you hired somebody and they're doing a good thing, that it is the function of the board to give them that kind of support for the program that seemed to be working or that is good, you know? Isn't that like the board should, you know, be supportive of, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And unfortunately, you know, they've made decisions that I disagree with wholeheartedly. For example, one of the things I found out at that last board meeting is that they've made it optional for principals to hire a social worker. To me, I mean, like, I had to pick up, what do you mean? Our students desperately need access to mental health services and social services. Like I just told you, they're hungry. I was sitting there trying to figure out how to feed them. What do you mean we don't need social work? You know, and so those types of things too really concern me. And that's why I feel, and I said that this is in my literature, because I feel that the current school board is out of touch with our community, with our schools, and with the classroom. And to me, especially when I was a teacher, I felt like when I went and I look at the school board, it's like they're on another planet, and I'm here in, you know, East Las Vegas, Central Las Vegas, and I can't get to those people. And even if I could, there's no guarantee that they're really listening to what I'm saying. And so, yeah, that's why they need to support what's being done right. And I also feel that, you know, I need to, and this is hard, but, you know, I need to step up to show that I'm an immigrant. I grew up in East Las Vegas. I graduated from El Dorado High School. We get labeled as one of the worst high schools in the city. But you know what? I had to work twice as hard. I got my bachelor's degree and I got a master's degree. So immigrant kids from the rough side of town can succeed. It shouldn't have to be as hard as it was for me. So that's why I also want to do this, because we are not maximizing our students' full potential. And there's so much of it out there. We're looking everywhere else to fix our problems, when if we really invest in the children here and groom them to be leaders in our own community, that's where I think we're gonna find the success.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that you grew up here, and I think a lot of students can relate to you because of that. So what else do you see in the board or the schools, and what do you wish to see or to happen in the CCSD if you were to get elected?
Absolutely. Well, again, I'll go back to what I said before. One of the biggest things that I really want to push for is more access to mental health care and social services for our students. Because I can sit here and tell you, yes, we're 49 out of 50. Many of our students are not reading at level. Many of our students are not doing math at their level. But I'm telling you also that those students are stressed, they're hungry. And so if we don't tackle those issues, we are not going to get our academics where they need to be. And so one of the big things that I really want to change is that right there, create more access to mental health services and social services for our students all across the board. So then we can focus on those academics and get that going. That is one of my biggest things that I want to see change. There was also just a story that was published by Channel 3. I think it was Marie Mortera did a story on how Nevada, we are literally ranked one of the worst for mental health care. And so that also goes to show the very high need that we have for mental health care in our state. Exactly. And so in a way though, I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy in seeing those things. And then one of the other issues that I want to tackle, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what I just said, is the violence in our schools. Yes. Let's be honest, there has been way too much violence in our schools from students to teacher, and even including, there was another article that came out recently that over 100 students have been hit by cars trying to get to, 100 CCSD students at least last year were hit by a vehicle near a school. And so that's violence. That's violence toward our children. And so we really need to increase, when I first came to this city, I remember those school zones, everybody took it seriously and everybody slowed down to 25 or 15. Right. We've lost that now. People don't want to go 15 until they get to the sign. So I really want to support CCSD police, work with Metro, work with Henderson, and try to make those areas around our schools safer. That's one place to start. But the mental health care and social services, if we can start with our younger kids and teach them how to regulate their emotions, I really think this will help solve the problem of violence in our schools. Because our children, again, we're lacking social services, we're lacking access to mental health care. Just to give you one example, I had a little guy, and I had to fight very, very hard and empower his mother to get him diagnosed. They got him diagnosed, ADHD and autism. Now he has what's called an IEP, an independent education program, which means he will be accommodated through his entire time at CCSD. Yes. Had we not fought for that, this child would be labeled as misbehaving, as a bad student, maybe get kicked out of the school, and not succeed. Right. And so that's just one example. And then imagine, then he gets to high school. And now it's been a lifetime of, instead of having coping mechanisms, you have trauma responses. And then you get violence. And then when the kids are violent at that high school level, it is so much more challenging and difficult. And so that's where, again, I think we need to tackle the problem early on and teach kids those skills so they can be more functional members of society, because I also feel that leads on to other problems we have in town, like our homelessness. There are a lot of people on the streets that are undiagnosed with mental issues or addiction. So it goes back to access to mental health care. Super important.
This is just a side question. Do you know if those, marijuana, revenues, tax revenues are actually reaching the schools?
That's a really good question. I need to look a little bit deeper because I did just see a presentation of what was in there. But I was told by several people at the school that Superintendent Jara said, quote, he would not use drug money for our school. Yes.
That's not what it was intended for.
But then it goes back to, again, it's political, right? It's in that rainy day fund that they created. I need to look a little bit more closely into that, but that money needs to be unleashed to our schools, because Colorado did it. Denver did it. Yes, they did. And years ago, when I was finishing up my education at Southern Illinois University in 2017, I knew about 3 people that were graduating and they were going to Colorado because there was money, there was jobs for them, and they were putting that marijuana money into their schools.
Right,
And that
right.
translated to jobs and people going there to serve those
Exactly.
communities. So I thought, that was 2017, that was when they legalized recreational here.
The law created that just for the schools, you know.
Right.
The tax revenues are exclusively for the use of, Department of Education, the
Yeah.
Nevada schools.
Yeah, no, and they put it in a rainy day fund. I will definitely take a closer look at that, and maybe next time we get together, have some more answers for you.
Ms. McKinley, last words will be yours. What would you like to tell our voters to vote for you?
My goodness, well, I would be honored to have your vote, but really because I want to make our schools better, and it's not just a blanket statement. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I graduated from CCSD schools. My brothers graduated from CCSD schools, all my cousins, my entire family, and I want my daughter to go to a CCSD school, and that means that we need to get all of our schools up to caliber so that everyone wants to send their children to our public schools. Our public schools haven't been serving the public. They have been serving different interests, standardized testing companies that make a lot of money off of us and really don't produce much. And I really want to take those resources and put them back into our community. You should also vote for me because I'm not a politician. I already have my career. My desire to do this is really to make this better for our children. So if you vote for me, I will fight for your kids. Thank you so much.
Mrs. McKinley, you're a candidate for the CCSD board. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here at the Pulse with us. We really appreciate you. Folks, we're out of time for today's edition. Please join us again for next week. I'm Sarah Ball. We thank you for watching.
And I'm Sam Buban. God bless your week.